Welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. Glad you can spend some time with us today. A lovely day out there, isn't it? A mix of sun and clouds, some sun, a little cool, but it is November, right? It's better than what we saw yesterday with the F word, flurries, and some places saw snow on the ground. So we've been fairly lucky. I know there was one morning there where we had a little bit of snow, but it eventually melted before the end of the day. And we've avoided that part, at least the shoveling part so far. Friends in Moncton, some places up towards Edmundston on the weekend saw they canceled school. They had 15 centimeters of snow up there. So I think we've been pretty lucky so far, and hopefully we'll remain that way through the month of November. Hey, wouldn't it be nice just to have one of those snowstorms just Christmas Eve, and then it kind of melts Boxing Day? It's nice to have a white Christmas, right? The weather, though, is going to change. We're going to get some more precipitation on that. You can catch the forecast with Alistair Alders here during the news in the morning and in the afternoon. Council getting down to business today. It's been a few weeks since Regional Council has met with a full agenda down at City Hall today. And, of course, tomorrow, Regional Councillors will be getting together for their first of what I would imagine will be a number of budget sessions as they go to work on the line items on each department's budget in an effort to reduce that tax rate. They told us yesterday, and it was in the budget documents released on Friday, that we're staring down the gauntlets of a 10.5% increase in property tax this year. Now, however you calculate the average cost of that increase on the price of an average home, I'm not sure if that has taken into account the recent increase in property value. Can I say? Because if you're basing that on a $200,000 or $275,000 property, I like to find one of those around here now. That being said, average home, according to the city, will see an increase of $270 if nothing changes as a part of this process. So I know many of you will be watching that very closely. I was sitting around after the show yesterday with my pen and my paper and was writing down sort of monthly expenses. And, as I mentioned, I am a renter, so I'm not going to see this immediately. But I think that it's going to get handed down to me eventually. We know there's a cap. We know that cap's at 5%. But if we continue to see these increases, and I know I've talked about these many times, the increase in property tax, the increase in water, which is going to hit property owners, particularly in buildings like I live in, pretty hard if they see a 36% increase. An increase, well, of course, water's included in my rent, so that's going to be another expense. If that 5% cap comes off, holy smokes, folks. Like it's gonna really be bad. And I can remember having conversations during the pandemic when the push was on to have a cap instituted, and this was the warning that we were told about, right? That if you put any kind of rent controls on, it's going to end up costing a lot more when the controls end. Now there's a push at Province House to not end these things, but we do know that there's an end date attached to them currently, and a 5% cap, which I'm sure many of you are going to be watching very closely. I know I am. Speaking of budgets, federal budget passed yesterday. Oh, quelle surprise. Budgets are always fun to watch, not necessarily for the actual dollars that are included in it, because when you're talking about a $78 billion that people don't understand. I don't understand what a $78 billion deficit. I know that we spend $500 million or whatever it is on paying the interest on the debt that we have. I understand that number, but the interesting part is to watch the political theater. Can I call it that? That happens particularly with a minority government, which we've had for a number of sessions now, and it always this brinkmanship. And it's, I don't know, I think maybe we're going to have to go to an election. Nobody. From coast to coast to coast, nobody in Canada wanted an election on this budget. Nobody did. So the NDP keeping silent on what they were going to do, and then we got to the climax of the film when we had the vote in the House of Commons, and lo and behold, there the government of the day had 2 extra votes that they didn't, so they passed the budget. 4 abstentions, for those of you that were counting. 2 members of the NDP abstained. 2 Conservative members abstained. One of them was the fellow who announced that he was going to retire shortly. Matt General, I think his name is. And another one was a Conservative MP who has had some pretty serious jaw surgery, from what I understand. So those were the 4 abstentions. So the Carney government won by 2 votes. They get to govern for the day, I guess, until the next confidence motion comes around. Some interesting numbers released today by Angus Reid on approval ratings for the 2 main party leaders. And Mark Carney currently sitting at 52% approval rating, which in the political world, if you're above 50%, you're doing pretty good. Down from where his higher levels were at during the election, before the election campaign. I think he was at 57 there. But he's at 52 now. Pierre Poilievre is at 34% approval rating. So the national polling showing that it's a neck and neck horse race when it comes to intentions for voters. It still seems that Canadians haven't gotten behind the leader of the Conservative Party, and I wonder if that's going to weigh into this leadership review that we've been talking about for months. That's coming up in January. Many have had suggested in the past that this leadership review for Pierre Poilievre after the election defeat last go around and him losing his seat was going to be just basically a rubber stamp or one of these slow motion walkthroughs. But with the defection of Chris D'Entremont and then Matt Genereux, as I mentioned, who's announced he's retiring, hearing that there could be others out there that are not happy with the leadership style of Mr. Poilievre, and Mr. Poilievre saying last week that he was not going to change his leadership style. It's who he is. I wonder if there's going to be more political drama in January when that meeting happens, when they have this leadership review. It's not grassroots. They're not going to the party members to vote on the leadership. It's as I understand it, is handpicked members that are going to show up. I don't think that Mr. Poilievre is going to lose his job, but I think, and maybe I'm wrong, but I've seen a different Pierre Poilievre since he was returned to the House after winning that by-election in Alberta. Yeah, it's still 3-word catchphrases, and yes, his job is to hold the government to account, and which gets just about daily criticism, and I understand that, but it's not the same level of maybe anger. Be interesting to see. Anyway, the federal budget has passed, and we will move forward. The Canadian Radio Telecommunications Commission, more commonly referred to as the CRTC. That's the body in this country that regulates the broadcast and telecom industry, is going to release new Canadian content rules for television today. For those of you that don't know what Canadian content is, television stations and radio stations, music radio stations, are required to play a certain percentage of Canadian, in our case, in Canadian music, and television stations a certain percentage of Canadian content on the television screen. It's to continue to foster, at least that's the theory, is to continue to foster the industry here in the country. Canadian content rules have been around for radio for a long time. They're much maligned. I will say that there are some restrictions on radio stations where they have to play upwards of 35% or more Canadian music. Now, there's a lot of Canadian music out there now, right? But in the early days, it was pretty tough. Anyway, the CRTC is going to release these rules today on television. Wouldn't it be nice to see more Canadian television shows on the networks, the Canadian networks, on Global and on CTV, and of course our national broadcaster on the CBC. No, it seems I turn on, and I know I pick on the CBC a lot, but I know it seems I turn on the CBC outside of the news hours, and I know some of the British shows that they show are very popular, and I understand that, right? I don't think we want to get rid of Coronation Street. I think there would be people in the streets if that happened. But wouldn't it be nice just to have some more? There are some, I will say, that are Heartland comes to mind for me. That are Canadian programming. But it's not like it used to be, and it's not like it is in other places around the world. If you have the opportunity, I know the BBC's been in the news a lot lately on their news end of things, but if you've been able to watch the BBC networks, they do a really good job on fostering British television. They show a lot of British documentaries, a lot of British television shows. In fact, we carry some of their British television shows. Wouldn't it be nice to have more? I mean, Mr. D, another one that comes to mind, right? Jerry D, of course, shooting a lot of that here. But wouldn't it be nice to have shows like we saw in the past and that were purely and truly Canadian, like King of Kensington or The Littlest Hobo or Beachcombers? Would be nice, right? And we know we have a thriving industry here, TV and film industry in this country. A lot of the American productions are coming up here to do it. So wouldn't it be nice if we had some homegrown TV again? Maybe I'm just being nostalgic because, I mean, I grew up with two channels, right? Most of you did. You had the CBC and you had CTV. For a long, long time we did. And then we had, and I'm using myself as an example, we had an American network attached to us where I was from, and suddenly, though, the Canadian television was awful, right? These are horrible programs when we could watch the mainstream shows that were beaming in from the United States. But then if you go back and look at them or watch them, because they're all available, all those old shows are available now, they were truly Canadian, like very Canadian. And it just would be nice to see more of that, I think. So we'll see what happens with the CRTC when they release their new CanCon rules. Taking a lot of calls here on the program as of late with regards to Nova Scotia Power. Some of you raising concerns that you're getting bills that don't seem to make sense to you. Some of the bills showing more usage than normal. Some bills showing more usage but lower prices. Anyway, we've reached out to Nova Scotia Power to talk about these usage estimates. And after we take our first break here on the program, a conversation with the Director of Customer Care for Nova Scotia Power. That's Chris Lanteigne, and he will be joining us. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Olstrand. Back in minutes. Here on the Todd Veinotte Show, and we hear concerns from our listeners during our open hours and throughout the show about things that are happening in the community, and we do our very best to try and get answers out to you from the source, so that we can maybe ease a little bit of the worry. There's enough worry in the world these days. If we can do our part to help that's what we do, and we've made it a priority here. And Vanessa does an outstanding job getting to the people that are in the know, so that we can get some of those questions answered. And that's what this next segment is all about. I've taken a number of calls here on the program lately as people are starting to get their Nova Scotia Power bills. And some of the numbers are, quite frankly, out of whack, and many are wondering what's going on. So we're very pleased today to welcome to the show the Director of Customer Care for Nova Scotia Power, and that's Chris Lanteigne. Chris, how are you?
I'm good, Dan. Thanks for having me this morning.
Sure. This is something I've been reading about, and I've been hearing from people a lot about, and I imagine you're hearing a lot too from customers out there.
Yes, absolutely. So our customer care team here at Nova Scotia Power does talk to thousands of customers a day about a variety of issues. But we have heard about concerns with bills, and happy to answer your questions this morning and hopefully help explain some of it to your listeners.
All right, Chris, I took a call last week from somebody who said that they had just opened up their Nova Scotia Power bill and they were going through the stats and the data that were associated with it, and we're seeing pretty significant spikes in usage, yet say that they're not doing anything different than they have done for the last 5 years. Is there a reason why the numbers are a little bit out of whack?
Yeah, and that's a very important question for customers, and I'm glad you asked. From our perspective, it is very important for us to actually look at each customer's unique situation. So I think it might help to add some context on, the experience that we've had over the last 7 months as, of course, recovering from the cyber incident that we detected in late April. So we had a period of time where we weren't actually able to issue bills to customers. That was from April 25th until early June. At that point in time, when we were able to issue bills, we began estimating bills. And the reason for that is that our meters that are on homes continue to accurately record the energy that's consumed in the home. However, our ability to get that information has been impacted. And I can talk in a minute about the recovery time for that, but essentially it's early 2026. So we began by estimating bills for customers, and then at the same time, we were bringing in a team of meter readers, people who get out and physically read the meters for customers. And we began to do some of that in July. That work has continued, and we've read about 3/4 of the province have had an actual meter read populating their bill, but that still means that there's a lot of customers that are getting estimated bills. So from the perspective of the question you've asked, it's very important for us to work with an individual customer if they do have concerns about their bill, so that we can help understand their unique situation. And of course, every customer's situation is different. I think the big thing for us is, considering our customers and making sure that we were trying to put them first. We made some decisions right away that are still in effect. So we are not charging late fees for any customer who does not pay their bill. There's no interest that's being charged, and no customer's been disconnected for not paying their bill. And we think that's really important because we do understand that there are some concerns with estimated bills. On the other side of that, if customers are talking to us, we will still, of course, encourage them to make a payment. And the reason for that is simply that we know that this challenge has been going on for the last several months, and we just don't want those balances to get unmanageable for customers. So that's one of the key messages that we have when people are talking to us. Again, just to close that off, I think one of the most important things is that we have all along been working to restore the connection that we have with meters so that we'll be able to read all customers' bills again, and we hope to have that work completed by early 2026.
So this is the way my brain works, Chris, is what you're saying is that the increase that people are seeing in their bill is a result of Nova Scotia Power making an estimate of what they think you may have used. But if for some, I have some callers that say that their bill has doubled or more. So would it be accurate or appropriate to say pay what you paid last year and then let this whole thing wash out?
Yeah, from my perspective, if that's something that a customer is wanting to do, we are fully supportive of that. And again, if they paid what they paid last year, and in the example you cite, the bill was more than that, that amount that they have not paid again, there's going to be no interest, there's going to be no late fees charged on that, and that's something that we want all customers to have that assurance that they're not going to be paying for power that they don't use. And when we're able to get the meter read on their home, the bill would then be reconciled so that it makes sense. And I think a good clarifying point for yourself as well, to your point where you're hearing from customers where their bills are higher, it's important to note that the estimate does consider usage at the premise for the previous season. That said, it is still an estimate. So you are correct. Some customers could be seeing an amount that is higher. Some customers could be seeing an amount that is lower as well. And it's not until we get those actual meter reads, which we're working towards, and again, we're working towards restoring our systems, that it'll all be reconciled.
Chris, I've also received emails and conversations with people whose bills are lower than usual, and they're worried about, a sticker shock when this all catches up.
Yep. Yeah, and that's a very, very valid concern, and it's something that we're concerned about as well. So the one thing that is important for customers to know is that if when we're working with customers on top of the not charging of late fees or interest, we're also willing to and wanting to work with customers on any balances that are owing. So if a customer gets a reconciliation and it's a higher amount, we are completely open to working with them to let them spread the payment of that increased amount over 12 or 24 months. And those balances, that also would be an interest-free payment for the customer. We wouldn't be charging interest on a balance that's carried forward like that. We think it's really important that we're being flexible and supportive, recognizing the situation that's unfolded over the last 7 months.
Chris, do we have to contact Nova Scotia Power when our bill's out of whack? And the reason why I ask that is that I also hear from people that it's long waits to get in through to talk to somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. So from a customer perspective, we definitely want to talk to everyone we can. And we do recognize that there's been long waits. So I'll talk about that in a moment. I think from a customer's perspective, though, again, we want them all to have that assurance that we're not charging the late fees, we're not charging the interest. So if they have an estimated bill and they're comfortable waiting, they can wait until that meter is read and the bill is reconciled. For the wait times into customer care, we do acknowledge that it's been harder to get through to us right now, and we do regret that. It's something that we've been actively working towards over the past several months. We've added about 40 people onto the lines to help take calls, and we're still hiring. We're actually in the process of recruiting more people to come in right now to help our customers. Again, some of the concerns you've talked about is driving people to want to talk to us, and we are here to help. And we're doing everything we can to get those wait times more reasonable so customers can reach us quicker.
Chris, earlier you said 26. You hope to have this resolved. That's a pretty wide swath of time. Is it first quarter, second quarter, something along like that?
It's the first quarter. Like we do hope that. Again, I know that this has been challenging for customers, and I know that means that we're still a few months away. But our teams, again, have been working diligently on restoring these systems really since we detected this incident 7 months ago. And we are still very hopeful that it'll be early 2026, so in that first quarter.
Got about a minute left, Chris. Some questions about how you go about, how does Nova Scotia Power estimate? How do you go? Is there a formula?
Yeah, so essentially what we will do is we will take a look at the energy that was consumed on the premise in the previous year and apply the estimate to the customer's bill if we have to estimate in that period of time. I think what's important to note is, again, every home in this province is unique. The amount of time in the billing cycle, it can range from the high 50s in terms of days into the low 60s. Most of our customers are billed every couple of months. It can have an impact. Changes in the home can have an impact as well too. So again, many estimates are very close to what the customer had saw in the previous year. Some of them are different, and you're obviously hearing concerns from customers with that. I think the most important thing for customers to remember is we do want to talk to them if they have those concerns that they need to talk through. And again, have that assurance that right now we're not charging late charges. There's no interest charges being applied to accounts. We want customers to have that assurance that if they do have concerns and they want to wait for their meter to be read, they can do that.
And if they overpay, you'll make that good, right? You'll credit that?
Absolutely. Yes, 100%.
Chris, I know you're busy and we're out of time. I appreciate yours.
Thanks for having me, Dan. I appreciate it.
Chris Lanteigne from Nova Scotia Power. Hope that answered some questions for you. My plan, and this is just my plan, is I'm going to pay what I paid last year and then let this whole thing wash out. Hopefully that will make sense. No late fees, no interest, no disconnection, I think is the important part here. So take a look at your bill before you pay it. Time to stop down and take another break. When we come back, the show continues. A conversation with Suzy Hansen. Why is it that the Houston government just won't release the environmental racism report? Suzy Hansen, NDP MLA, your guest. We're back after the news. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. Hope you're having a wonderful Tuesday as we continue through the work week. It's been talked about an awful lot, but not a lot known about what is actually included in it. And what I'm speaking of is the Environmental Racism Report. Now, this was commissioned by the government a couple years ago. They've been sitting on it for a full year, and at last check, haven't got any plans to release it. Suzy Hansen, the official opposition's new Justice Critic, demanding action now, calling on the Houston government to release the report. Very pleased to welcome Suzy to the program. Suzy, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
I guess the first question is, we have never seen it, so do we even know what's in this report?
That's a good question, and we don't know. But what we do know is that Black and Indigenous folks across Nova Scotia have experienced health impacts from environmental racism for decades, and they deserve to know the answers.
Now, this is, as I mentioned in the preamble, the Houston government's had this report in their hands for over a year now, right?
Yes, they have.
And still haven't released it. Have they said why they're taking so long?
No, and the latest conversation is that they're waiting on the panel to talk with the panel. They're bringing them together to have a discussion. They don't need to have this discussion if we already have the report that apparently has been sitting on the desks of multiple ministers, and we don't even know who has read the report. And it would be interesting to know what those recommendations are if they intend to implement them across departments to help all Nova Scotians.
You mentioned the panel. What panel is that?
The Environmental Racism Panel.
Okay. So was this panel struck before this report was done or after or a part of it?
It was before.
Okay.
The panel was struck based on an amendment that was put forward in the environmental, the ACRA Act. I don't know what their acronyms.
Sure.
But the Minister of Environment put forward his environmental act, and I amended it to include an environmental racism panel to redress environmental racism across Nova Scotia. So this information has been in the hands of this government since 2021. They finally put together a panel of a number of leaders across the province, and the panel released a report that has been sitting on the desk of the ministers for a year or so now.
And the Houston government says they want to speak with this panel before they release the report. Isn't that just a phone call and a meeting?
Absolutely. It's very frustrating, especially when folks across the province who have experienced these harms with the environment, with environmental racism, came forward and talked about, their experiences, their family experiences when they had dumps beside their living in their own community, when they had toxic waste being dumped into their water and they're not able to drink that water. I think folks in community and African Nova Scotians and Indigenous folks deserve to know what those recommendations are so that they can address environmental racism across this province. In order to do that, we need to know what those recommendations are so that we can actually put forward what's necessary for Nova Scotians.
Obviously the Black and Indigenous communities have been calling for this for many years.
Yeah. Yeah, and the public needs to know. This is a public document when we think of the consultations came from public, and they deserve to know what the answers are to this public issue.
You're calling on the new Justice Minister to take some leadership and release this report. Have you had a conversation with Scott Armstrong on this?
I have not yet. I have released a letter to the minister, and I haven't heard back. But, this is, once again, that pattern of secrecy of, there are some really important things that are clearly in this report that they don't want to release. And we deserve to know what those answers are so that we can move forward in addressing environmental racism in Nova Scotia. And that's their mandate. They need to do that, and we expect that work to be done.
Premier has heard these calls for the full year and hasn't really given us an answer, has he?
No, and as public servants, we serve the public, and that's our role, is to be able to make sure that Nova Scotians have the information and the things that they need to live here in Nova Scotia. And we know the history of the environment, of the harms of environmental racism, and that history needs to be addressed. And we need to make sure it doesn't happen to any other community in Nova Scotia the same way it's happened to Athertonville, Boat Harbor, Shelburne, Lincolnville. There are a number of communities that have had these impacts affecting their health. And we don't want it to happen ever again.
Suzy, appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Suzy Hansen is the critic for this file. This is the part of government that really gets under my skin. When we have a very public issue, right? And then there's a committee that gets struck, and then the committee does what committees do, and then they ask for a report to be done on things, and those reports go out. All of these have dollars attached to them, right? These are all money line items. People don't do committees and do reports for free. They cost us dollars. And then when the report goes out into the community or out to be done, and then comes back to government, it gets put in on a dusty shelf with a whole bunch of other reports. I wonder what's in that document. I wonder what's inside that document that the government doesn't want to have to face. If there's nothing in there, if this is just an exercise, then release it, right? If there's no concerns or the report's inconclusive or whatever it is, just release it. And let the people in Nova Scotia make their judgment on it. And if there's some recommendations on there that can help a community out with some of the things that Suzy listed, like dumps and those kind of things that are impacting those communities, then let's fix them. But sitting on a report, even if it wasn't your government that was responsible for it, makes you look guilty, doesn't it? Had a conversation before the news with Nova Scotia Power about the ongoing issue with estimated bills, and I had suggested that it might be a good idea to just maybe pay what you paid last year. And I think that's what I'm going to do when it comes to my bills. Wasn't that much. Mind you, I don't use a lot of power, but my bill wasn't that much out, but I'm going to have to go back and take a look. I should have brought it with me today. I'm going to have to take a look at it and go back and take a look, because from what I remember on it, it wasn't a whole lot of out of whack, for lack of a better term. The numbers weren't that far off, but I'm getting emails from people where it's astronomical, right? Can you imagine that if this this email from Gianna says, "Hey Dan, I live in an apartment. My power bills range between $120 and $160. So if her bill's like mine, then that's every 2 months, right? And that's summer outside of summer because of air conditioning. That's normally what the range, right?" She writes that my neighbor had an estimated power bill of $1,300. And she says, I absolutely use much more power than she does. How in the world are they estimating these bills? Well, the representative from Nova Scotia Power laid out how they use it. They use historical data and so on and so forth. But I think that they need to check their math. But anyway, I think that the most important argument or most important nugget that came out of our talk with Nova Scotia Power today is that they're not charging you any late fees. They're not charging you any interest, and they're not disconnecting anybody for not paying their bills. I wouldn't suggest not paying it, because at the end of the day, when this all washes out, if it ever does wash out, then there's still going to be a bill to pay, and it could be significant depending how long this takes. But the good news is that if you choose not to, and if you choose to wait to get a proper reading on your meter, then you're not going to be charged any late fees or any interest. And I'm assuming that's probably not going to, if that's the case, won't hit your credit score, which is something that I know a lot of us are concerned about. Getting ready to take our next break on the program. When we come back, a conversation about cervical cancer. Canada expected to fall short now of its goal to eliminate that cancer. Senior Manager of Advocacy for Atlantic Canada and Strategic Initiatives from the Canadian Cancer Society is Heather Mulligan, and she will be our guest. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. Welcome back. Don't forget, coming up after the news at the top of the hour, we're going to open up the telephone lines for the open hour, second open hour of the week, and I look forward to that. So if you've got something that's on your mind, maybe something you heard today that you want to share, that's a golden opportunity to do so, and we'll open up those lines here shortly. But first, 5 years after the World Health Organization launched its global strategy to eliminate cervical cancer, Canadian Cancer Society has released a new report highlighting that Canada's progress has stalled. Published on the Cervical Cancer Elimination Day of Action, the report showed that cervical cancer rates in Canada, once steadily declining, have now plateaued, signaling that the country may be at risk of falling short of its goal to eliminate the disease by 2040. Very pleased to welcome to the program Senior Manager of Advocacy, Atlantic Canada and Strategic Initiatives from the Canadian Cancer Society, and that is Heather Mulligan. Heather, how are you?
I'm good. Good morning. How are you?
I am well. Now, this is a bit concerning considering we were doing just so good and then all of a sudden we just aren't.
Very much so. And what's also troubling is we know that cervical cancer is one of the only cancers we can eliminate, and it's almost entirely preventable through a combination of vaccination and effective cervical cancer screening. And so seeing these numbers and knowing that we're going to fall short of our goal means that we need really concerted and deliberate action by all provincial and territorial governments to focus on eliminating this cancer.
You mentioned vaccinations. What vaccinations are used to combat this cancer?
Yeah, so cervical cancers are connected to human papillomavirus, also known as HPV. All sexually active Canadians at some point, 75% of them will have an HPV infection and not even know it. And so it is something that is routinely offered in schools through a school-based program here in Nova Scotia to those who are in grade 7. However, there are some Nova Scotians, for a variety of reasons, whether it be that they've weren't at school that day, they didn't get the proper parental consent, or they just simply didn't have enough information about the HPV vaccination, missed out, which increases their risk of not only obtaining an HPV infection, but also transmitting and not even knowing it. And so, we've been calling on the government of Nova Scotia to follow its sister provinces like Newfoundland and Labrador and Prince Edward Island in adopting what's called a once eligible, always eligible vaccination approach, so that Nova Scotians who want to get vaccinated but maybe missed out of the school-based program and have aged out of the program at 19, but are still eligible for the vaccine can do so at no out-of-pocket cost to them.
So as it stands right now, up until 19, it's free. But if you don't have the vaccination when you turn 20, then you're out of pocket if you want it.
You are out of pocket, yeah, and it comes with a variety of costs, not only to the patient or to the Nova Scotian, but to our healthcare system. So we also think about the vaccination itself. It's important to know that the HPV vaccine is administered to both males and females, but it also prevents 6 cancers, not just cervical cancer, but 6 cancers. And so when we think about if you're aged out, you have to go to your family doctor to request that vaccination. You have to then go obtain the vaccination, have the dispensing fee at the pharmacy, then have it injected. And so that's a lot of healthcare cost as well. And so, having something streamlined, offered through public health at no cost to patients, is the most effective way and the best effective tool in our toolbox right now to eliminate cervical cancer.
I didn't know that males got it. I thought it was girls only.
No, so cervical cancer, yes, and anyone who has also a cervix is susceptible. But HPV also is tied to 6 cancers. So it's not just cervical cancer.
Right.
There are other cancers that are also associated with an HPV infection.
Has the government been receptive to this? We obviously don't have it yet.
We don't have it yet, but we remain hopeful. And, 2 years, last year, the government signaled its commitment to the elimination of cervical cancer by, making the transition from Pap tests, which is the primary cervical cancer screening tool, to HPV testing within 2 years. At least that was a commitment last year. And so, that is also following the lead of other provinces. We've seen British Columbia, we've seen Prince Edward Island, New Brunswick, Newfoundland and Labrador, Quebec, and Ontario, moving towards HPV screening for cervical cancer as a primary screening tool because its sensitivity, it is much more sensitive. It can be administered at home with swabs. So you don't have to go into a clinic to get a HPV test. But more importantly, it also means that those Nova Scotians that may not have access to primary care or access to a clinic can still have that important cancer screening tool in their homes. And so we're also hoping that the government of Nova Scotia quicken its pace in that transition to catch up to sister provinces in Atlantic Canada, but across the country, to offer HPV testing as the primary cervical cancer screening tool.
If people want more information about HPV and cervical cancer and vaccinations, I would imagine getting in contact with your organization would be a good first start.
Yep, we have a variety of information for Nova Scotians. So if you don't have a family doctor and you're looking to figure out where to go next, if you're looking for information about vaccinations, visit cancer.ca. We have a variety of tools there. But more importantly, if you believe that the province of Nova Scotia should be expanding vaccination eligibility and adopting HPV as a cervical cancer screening tool to eliminate cervical cancer, again, a golden opportunity here. Not often can we say in the cancer community we can eliminate a cancer. So the opportunity is in front of us. If any Nova Scotian hears this and feels motivated, visit cancer.ca/stop cervical cancer. You can send a letter to your elected official and join the voices of many other Canadians who want to see this change.
Heather, appreciate your time.
Not a problem. Thank you so much.
That is Heather Mulligan from the Canadian Cancer Society. As I mentioned, we will be taking a break here for the news at the top of the hour. On the other side of it, we're going to throw open those telephone lines, and we're going to do our second open hour of the week. I look forward to these every day. The normal rules apply with an open hour. You can talk about whatever it is on your mind. Maybe something you heard earlier today on the show. Maybe something you heard yesterday, maybe something that we've discussed earlier this week, or maybe something that is fresh and that we haven't talked about yet today. That's a golden opportunity to bring that to our attention. I did come across a survey that was quite interesting to me, and I'm curious as to what your thoughts are on it. It reads, with the holidays approaching, we can't avoid it, right? I went to the grocery store yesterday, and Christmas is in full effect. Atlantic households are aiming to keep celebrations both modest and keep their bills covered. New survey data brought to us by Angus Reid, sponsored by Money Mart, shows that Atlantic Canada is leading the country for planned pullbacks while still reporting the strongest budgeting confidence in the country. Some of the findings from the survey with regards to Atlantic Canadians. We here in our part of the world say 81% of us say that inflation will impact our spending this year. I can't believe that that's not 100, right? There may be some of you out there that are listening to us today that are in a position financially that a significant increase in price of the cost of goods isn't going to impact you, and more power to you. But it certainly is impacting me, and I know it's impacting many of you. 64% of us, 6 out of 10, anticipate that we're going to cut back compared to last year. And that, by the way, is the highest among the provinces in the country. 80% say they're going to cut back on gifts, retail 61%, dining 51%, entertainment 38%, and travel 41% say they're cutting back on their travel this year. I'm interested in your thoughts as we get into all of the hustle and bustle. Black Friday's next week. Are you planning to cut back your holiday spend this year from the years previous or even last year? Might be something you want to talk about. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. You spending less than Christmas this year? I'd like to know. We're back after the news. All right, welcome back. It's time for the open hour. Lines are open, 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. As I mentioned before the break, normal rules apply. You can talk about whatever it is that's on your mind. That's the beauty of the open hour. Again, 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. And very quickly, before we take our first call this morning, we've got some news to pass along to you. This Friday from 11 until 12 o'clock on the Todd Veinotte Show, the Premier of Nova Scotia, Tim Houston, will be in studio taking questions, hopefully answering a few, and we'll be here for the full hour. We look forward to the Premier's visits. He does them semi-regularly, and Vanessa have been working very hard behind the scenes to make this happen for you. So it is confirmed. It's going forward. Premier of Nova Scotia will be here for a full hour on Friday at 11. Don't worry, we'll move the open hour so that you can have your Friday free for all as well in there. It's going to be like a double dose. It'll be a lot of fun, and we're looking forward to it. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's go right to the phones, and let's welcome Chris to the show. Chris, how are you?
Hey, Dan, what's going on, buddy?
Nothing. What's on your mind?
Just want to give my hats off to Vanessa and you. And you had big shoes to fill.
Yep.
Rick and Todd.
Yes, sir.
And you're doing a wonderful job, bud.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Seriously, you have a really good radio voice.
Maybe I'll do. Maybe I should have a career in it. What do you think?
Yeah, I know. So anyway, yeah, you seriously, I love the show. Been listening to it for years, and I knew Rick Hall and Todd, and you are doing a great job, buddy.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Chris.
I love when Gloria McCluskey calls in, and it's such an entertaining show. Yeah. But anyways, okay, let me get back to the
Sure.
topic I'm on here. Okay, Halifax Water, all right?
Yes, sir.
So, yeah, honest to God, Halifax Water, Dan, they phoned me up one day, and they said, oh, you didn't pay your bill. It was maybe a day late.
Okay.
I said, okay, so I went to the mall. I lived in the west end of Halifax, and I went and paid it and everything. So get this, the next time the bill came, it was pretty steep. It was over $200.
Holy smoke.
It used to be $60. And, I don't even take too many showers.
Okay.
So anyways, yeah, get this, Dan. So I'm sitting here. I just got the bill. I swear to God, I just got it in my mailbox. It was for $210. And so, thank God, before I got my shower, I'm sitting watching, sports, the scores or whatever. I turn on the sports net, see who won the hockey game or whatever. And friggin', I see this blue truck, Halifax water truck, pull up. And a guy gets out with a great big drill, and he's walking across my property.
Is he going to cut your water off?
So I go, yeah, get this, Dan. I go out in my house coat.
Right.
I just get up. I'm getting ready to have my shower. Thank God I didn't get in it before I didn't see him do it.
Right.
So I'm sitting here, Dan, and he comes running across my front lawn. I live in the West End. It's a pretty nice area. And I go out, I went out. I said, what are you doing? He goes, well, I'm going to have to cut you off. You didn't pay your bill. I said, what? I just got it, bud. And then I had to phone up the receptionist.
Mm-hmm.
He said, yeah, call Cindy or somebody. And so I phoned her. I said, geez, I said, they're going to destroy me. They caught me off and everything.
Wow.
And I said, oh, yeah.
And you're only a day late on the bill previous.
Yes.
Holy smokes.
Honest to God, Dan, like it was unbelievable.
Oh.
And I phoned Cindy,
Yep.
the receptionist at the Halifax Water. She was really nice. She goes, yeah, give them the phone. Yeah, and she said, no, don't cut him off. Like, what are you doing?
Holy smokes, dude.
Good God.
Right?
I know. Holy smoke.
I'm glad you caught that, Chris.
Yeah. But listen, I hope my favorite caller calls today. I met her before.
There you
Gloria? I did. I met her a few times.
All right, Chris, I appreciate the call, my friend. I hope that your water stays on. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. It seems that is a bit ambitious and we'll take Chris at his word. Of course we will. That one day late and then the next bill comes and they're already cutting your water off. That'd be a pretty scary situation. Thanks for sharing with us, Chris. I do appreciate that. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome John to the program. John, how are you?
Not too bad. How are you yourself?
I am well. What's on your mind today?
I think they should call this show the Dan Show. I think it's going to come to that. I hear from the grapevine they might move it to your name.
Oh, you hear that, do you? Well, I haven't heard that. You got better sources than I.
Well, the grapevine gets around sometime, but
it does.
Would you take the job?
Well, I mean, like I've said, I'm only holding the seat for now, so no decisions have been made, and I haven't heard from Todd. So as you and I are speaking, it's the Todd Veinotte Show and will be until things change.
Yeah, anyway, I'd like to mention two things quickly. First of all, it seems to me that I don't see people cutting back, really. And maybe they are, a lot of people are, but I was in Costco today, and I see people at the cashier with $300 and $400 and $500 worth of stuff that they're going out the door with. That appears to me like, where are they cutting back? And they're buying these Christmas wreaths that sell for $25 and $35 and $50. I mean, you don't need that kind of stuff. So how are they cutting back? Anyway, that's up to those individuals that are spending that kind of money.
It is.
But to me, I don't see it. I don't see the cutback when I go to Costco, and especially Costco. The other thing is the budget.
Yeah.
I think our friend Mark Carney is very, very lucky that this vote was taken, let's say right now, just before Christmas. I think if this vote had been taken any time later on and not the holidays coming up, I think he would have lost. I think I definitely. I'm not saying I'm against Mark Carney. I'm just saying that I think he would have lost this confidence vote if it had been a little bit later for the vote, because number one is, look how close it was, and it was all because of the Green Party. This guy, Don Tremont, who went against his own constituents and walked across the floor. This other guy, the ones that abstained from voting. How lucky can you be that these people stepped aside so that the vote would go in his favor? I think the people of Canada right now, to me, listening to the news and everything and watching things, it looks to me like Mark Carney has really lost his popularity. I mean, even though you said this morning on the news that he still is holding 52%.
That's the latest data from Angus Reid.
From what I hear, I think he's losing tremendously his popularity of winning another election, that if it came up right now. And I think right now that if the next time there's a vote for the government to win in next year, I think it's possibility he's going to lose. Anyway, that's my say for today.
Appreciate it, John. 902.
Oh, by the way, Dan.
Yeah.
When it comes to Poilievre, I don't know why I'm not saying I'm in his favor and that he's a great leader, but I don't see nothing wrong with this man, what he has really done. You know, I listened to his campaign, and my God, his campaign I thought was very much in favor of the Canadian people. You know, it sounded very strong. Now, why they don't like him, I wish I could understand why that a lot of people are against this man. He looks to me like if they lose him, he's probably the only best leader right now that they can have that can stand up for the Conservative Party. So I just don't know. And anyway, you have a great day.
Thanks, John. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Pierre Poilievre's approval rating is it's the lowest that it's been, according to this new data. Mark Carty has lost some of his shine. I think he's down 5 points from the height of when he was first elected and during the elbows up and the beginning of all of the for lack of a better term, stuff with the United States. So maybe John's right. Maybe he is starting to lose some of his swagger. We normally do budgets in the spring, right? We don't normally do budgets in the fall. So was this calculated? John's probably right. Would he have failed in the spring if we did it? I doubt it. I really do. I don't think that Canadians want we just had an election. I don't think we want another one. I know there's some of you out there that do, but the majority don't, and I think that anybody that forces it will probably get punished at the ballot box. But that's just my opinion. That budget had no chance of failing ever. Don't let the score ever cloud your judgment on it. That's all orchestrated. That is political theater at its best. When the Prime Minister walked into the House of Commons for that vote, he knew it was going to pass, without question. The narrowness of the victory by two votes, that was all calculated before this happened. We have to stop and take a break. The open hour continues on the other side. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. Lines are open, 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're back in minutes. All right, welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. It's the open hour. Lines are open, 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's go directly to the phones and welcome Dave to the show. Dave, how are you?
Very good, Dan. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure. What's on your mind?
The politics is a game, and the Liberals and the NDP have been playing that very well, and good for them. You know, that's politics. But I don't want to talk about the budget. I don't think we're going to see anything immediate off that, unfortunately. But maybe long-term projects that could take decades or a decade at least on some of them. So, and a lot of spending, but that's just the way it is. So what I'd like to talk about is your trade, which is journalism, and BBC in particular. Dan, you must be very familiar with what's going on with the BBC right now. It's in a crisis situation.
It certainly is, and rightly so, in my opinion.
Rightly so as well, and it should be brought up to our folks that maybe aren't aware of what's going on with the BBC, which is similar to the CBC. It's publicly funded. We pay for the CBC through our taxes and what have you to keep it up and running, and we expect honesty, I would say. And I think BBC traditionally, internationally, with their reporters and their journalists abroad, are, we're supposed to accept that they're fairly reliable. But this particular regenerating or editing, and I call it doctoring up of editing of Trump's speech January 6th, anybody can go on there and look at what they did, even BBC itself. It's at the point where two of its executives have stepped down. Yep. They've resigned. And I think people are very upset in Britain as well because, you expect a fairly honest reporting from, one of the I guess, well-renowned journalists broadcasting is BBC. So, to me, you half expect that on social media, today. I mean, it's gotten just gross and out of hand and allegations here and there. I peruse through things, and I like to consider myself fairly informed when it comes to news. I'm a bit of a news junkie. I have a little bit of time now, more than I used to, and I take more interest in it. But to me, I am absolutely shocked with this, and quite upset too. What's going on here? And I think Trump is not going to take this lightly.
No, he's going to sue them.
As we can all expect. Yeah, upwards of $1 billion. Now, remember, he was awarded...
I think it was $5 billion, wasn't it?
Well, he may settle with $1 billion. I'm not too sure.
He said the BBC story I'm looking at says that he's threatening a $5 billion lawsuit.
It's very possible. It gets up there, and he's got teams of lawyers and whatever. And I don't... It's not the money thing. I think this should be brought up, and I brought this up for the reason that, we do put some trust. It's funny, I called, not funny, but I called Rob Snow last week, and I think one of his questions was trusting certain, journalism and law enforcement, blah, blah, blah. And I did talk around journalism, and this was before this had happened. And I like I said, I'm very disappointed. And, here's a plug for you and radio. I like it because, you can hear people like your last caller. You hear people boots on the ground, if you will.
Right.
And I think it's a lot more integrity involved. You have an open line and you allow people to talk. And, your company, Rogers, allows that. And that's fantastic, I think. And, I listen to radio a lot. And by the way, if you haven't ever caught a ball game on the radio, of course,
best way to do it.
Baseball's over. Best way to do it, Dan. It really is. So yep. I just thought I'd bring that to and you're fully aware of what's going on, and it's an ongoing thing as well. This is not going to end nicely for BBC, unfortunately.
I don't think so. Hey, Dave, I appreciate your call.
Cheers, man. Cheers.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Not to belabor Dave's point, but I absolutely agree with him. And this is going to leave a lasting impact on the BBC. And on, by extension, legacy media, right? Period. Donald Trump forever now has been saying everything that comes out of non-partisan reporting is fake news, right? That's been he created the term. And when something is done like this, it lends credence to that. And then it makes you wonder, right? The show is called Panorama, by the way. It was a BBC show that did this. And it makes you wonder how legit the rest of Panorama's reporting has been. This isn't over. And two executives, I think, is just the tip of the iceberg at the BBC. I think that that corporation now is in absolute crisis mode. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome James to the show. James, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Good morning.
What's on your mind?
I'm calling as a follow-up. I just caught the very tail end of it, but you had MLA Suzy Hansen on, I believe.
I did.
About the failure of the government to publish the results of a committee work. Is that correct?
The Environmental Racism Report. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Exactly. So that's the theme I'd like to pick up on.
Sure.
And I think, this has come up before. The government's approach to transparency is to not be transparent. That's their default position. And I think you said you're trying to get the premier on again.
He's on Friday. He's going to be on 11 o'clock Friday morning.
Wonderful. So I put in my request that you bring up the topic of transparency to him. There's the Committee on Racism example. There's something on CBC website today about another MLA, Dr. Rod Wilson, and his saga of trying to get permission to do some shifts in an ER.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. That one I think I'm going to dig into.
I encourage you to read the story on the website. It's got all the detail. It took from January till very recently, so almost a year, for a highly qualified, highly experienced ER doc to get permission to do some temporary work in Yarmouth and Canso to help out people who were waiting 12 hours in the ER. And it's not a pretty story when you know all the details. The government really
The question I have about it, James, is there's an ethics issue with that, because he's drawing an MLA salary and drawing a salary from Nova Scotia Health. I wonder if that's where it's digging in.
Well, good question, legitimate question. There's a specific section in the House of Assembly Act that says physicians are permitted to work as physicians. So if you read the story, he went to the Conflict of Interest Commissioner in the spring. The Conflict of Interest Commissioner said, no problem, go for it. But then the deputy, and then the minister, and then the premier, and it just wild. Everybody gets involved and says, anyway, it's inexplicable to me, but I'll see how the premier explains it.
James, I'm up against the break. I appreciate your call, sir.
Okay.
Have a good one.
Thanks.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Open hour continues after the news. All right, welcome back. A couple of emails with regards to our interview earlier today on cervical cancer. And some of you say that it sounded like I didn't know that men didn't have a cervix. That's not at all what I was referring to. The person, Heather Mulligan, that was on the show said that the HPV vaccine was available for both women and men, and that's what I was referring to, just to set the record straight. Of course, I know that men don't have a cervix. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Let's welcome Rodney to the show. Rodney, how are you?
Good. How are you, Dan?
I am living the dream, as they say.
Good. Well, I just want to speak to my power bill that I have.
Sure.
I paid for it already, but anyway, my son and I built a house last year, and they came and hooked up the power, I think, in November, the end of November, and I had a construction heater on, and my bill from then till June was $3,800. And and there's no other power. We use that to heat, for the drying chip rock and stuff like that, taping and all that.
So it ran 24/7, did it?
It had a thermostat on it, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah,
it was set off.
fair
We had
enough.
it at like 65 degrees or whatever, right?
Understood.
But the house was well insulated.
Okay.
We had it all insulated before we put that heater in, right?
Sure.
And I just think that was outrageous. But anyway, I tried to call them and talk to them about it, but my wife got ahead of me and paid it before I got a chance to talk to them. So I was thinking that maybe I should be due for a credit. I talked to an electrician, and they said there's no way, Rod, that power should have been that high for a new home with no other power but with that little heater that I had.
Well, hopefully when they do this correction or whatever it is, then they'll sort that out for you, Rodney.
Yeah, I hope so. But
right,
that's all I have. Anyway, thank you.
Have a good one.
For listening. All
Cheers.
right, bye now.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255 is the number. We're going next to Brian. Brian, how are you?
Good. Yourself?
I'm okay. What's on your mind?
Good. Earlier, you had a caller, John, call in about individuals not cutting back.
Right.
He says he went to Costco.
Yeah.
He sees people still buying everything. I feel like we sometimes need to remind people that the people shopping at Costco aren't necessarily the ones suffering a lot. And the ones we're referring to that need to make the major cutbacks are probably the families that have to use, say, the food bank or affordable housing. Part of the issue, and I think it gets a little ignored in our society, is in this economic time that we live in, it's not that everyone is suffering, it's just that the divide between lower income and upper income is growing at an exponential rate to the point that almost the middle class doesn't exist anymore.
It certainly gets narrowed. It's not like it used to be, right? It was there's a lot of people that are hurting out there, I would say.
Exactly. And not to pick on John, but he did also comment about Polyev. And as a let's just say middle class white man, the reason I don't vote for Polyev is because the man's never worked a job in his life. He's only been a politician forever. So there's no way he, as a leader of the Conservative Party, can understand the struggles I go through because he's never had the struggle. He's been a politician forever.
Great call, Brian. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good one.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Julie, how are you? And Julie's gone. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Maybe she hit a button. Happens to me all the time. So if you did that by mistake, Julie, call back. We'll get you on. Eric, how are you?
I'm good, Dan. I'm going to be very quick. If we really want to take a look at our healthcare system, we have to fix our food supply. Quite recently, I've been listening to some people that are well informed, and I'll just give you a couple examples. It's that the things that are being advertised as being something that they're not. For instance, olive oil isn't really pure olive oil. Maple syrup isn't really pure maple syrup. Honey is not really pure honey. We have in some stores meats that come from 2 or 3 different countries and are blended together. The stuff when you go to a movie that you put on popcorn is carcinogenic. The aqua fish industry, fish farming, the fish is not totally the healthiest for us because of the use of antibiotics and other things that happen in those farms. And, you know, the experts say there's only 3 types of oil that we should use: avocado and coconut and olive oil. And if we're using those and they're not really what they are, then that in itself can cause a problem. They also go on to say that what's termed as vegetable oil is not really very healthy for us, like canola oil, safflower oil, grapeseed oil, and all that kind of stuff. So we could be corrupting our bodies by what's in the food supply. The other thing I had trouble with is with GMO-produced produce. Do we really know the total effect that's going to have on our body after a long period of time? And I think the other day, and I don't know much about this because I never heard it discussed, you were talking about cloned meat.
Yes, sir.
Really?
Yep.
Really? I don't think that's a good idea. And then you have cheese that's not real cheese, butter that's not fully real butter, you know. And then you look at all your processed meats that have tremendous shelf lives. And then you look at all our other produce that's not organic. I mean, really organic. That's sprayed with what's called glycemic phosphate, and that's carcinogenic. We're poisoning ourselves. And if you go down an aisle and look at all the snack foods that apparently seem to be healthy, every single one of them has vegetable oil in it, and that leads to the buildup of visceral fat and clogged arteries and all that kind of stuff. So I really think the government has a responsibility to look into our food supply, to look into the purity of our food supply, and look at all the additives and artificial stuff in our food supply, and look and see how the health problems are being caused: obesity, diabetes, liver. You know what I mean? All that kind of stuff. It's a lot of it. At least 70% of it is by our food. And I think the government has a responsibility to clean this up. Now, it might take a long time, but if they do, they'll save. I'm positive they'll save billions of dollars in healthcare. So that's my little rant about that.
All right, Eric, appreciate it. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Labeling, right? And Eric had mentioned maple syrup, and I remember speaking, this is going back a couple of years, when I was working in New Brunswick, and of course they have a rather robust maple syrup industry there. And labeling is pretty tight about it being 100% maple syrup or not, right? You have to look at the label real close. And Eric, you probably have many examples, and I don't dispute that. But the stuff that we normally put on our pancakes that, you know, has been rebranded recently, they call it table syrup. They don't call it maple syrup, right? And it's that season. I won't take up much time, but it's that season, and I am a big fan of eggnog. I love eggnog. It's like my ultimate favorite. I don't like that it comes out in October now, but it's my ultimate favorite. And I picked up my favorite brand of eggnog at Sobeys on Monday, and I got it home. They don't call it eggnog anymore. They call it holiday nog, And they call it milk beverage because there's not a lot of milk in it. I'll just say. So to Eric's point, I get it. And labeling is an issue. And, we have to be smart as consumers, right? But there are some industries, some food industries that are very particular about their labeling. And I can tell you maple syrup is one of them. And I'm sure that the honey producers of Nova Scotia will tell me the same thing about their honeys. You have to be careful at the store making the proper selection, but the labeling is there. We're going to stop, take a break. Phones lines are wide open, folks. If you want to get on before the top of the hour, here's the opportunity. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're back after the break. Don't forget, coming up after the news at noon, we're going to turn things over to Dr. Rob Thacker from St. Mary's University. It is time, of course, our weekly visit in the world of science, and maybe we can stump the science guy this week. What do you think? Just keep that in mind. That's going to happen in about 15 minutes' time, but we still have some time left here on the program to devote to you, as I like to say, and a couple of lines that are open if you want to call in, 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. On a more serious note, got an email from Dawn. It says, hey, Dan, it's funny how Dave, one of our callers, jumps on to the BBC about lack of integrity and truth when the same time supporting a chronic cheat who is incapable of telling the truth. Of course, integrity is critical in journalism, and what the BBC did was terrible. But to expect anything less from the U.S. president is disingenuous, and Dave never calls out Trump for his lack of integrity. Never. Why do so many people set the bar so low with Donald Trump? And that is from Dawn. Well, Dawn, I agree with you for the first half. I agree with what the BBC did was terrible, and is just going to harm that corporation for many years to come. But just because it's Donald Trump, and many people have a problem with Donald Trump, and he has been proven to be dishonest, I would say, with some of his comments for many years now, in both terms and before and during campaigns and so on and so forth, doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it right that because you have an opinion of somebody that you can essentially fabricate a quote. It doesn't make it right. And y'all know that I'm not the biggest fan of Donald Trump. I don't think that's any secret. But what the BBC did was wrong. And they should be held to account. It's that simple. My comments, it always reminds me how the smallest comment on the show brings out the most responses, and people are flooding me with all kinds of eggnog quotes, apparently. This one comes from Paul. It says, "You're drinking the wrong nog, Dan." It says, "Farmers makes actual eggnog using real eggs. It's delicious." Yeah, that's very true. And it's actually labeled as eggnog on the shelf. And I said that the brand, I'm not going to say brand names, but you can figure it out because there's only one that does it. It's in a black box. And there's Holiday Nog, and they don't call it milk beverage. They call it dairy beverage. So I'm assuming that it's something in the makeup of that, in the ingredients list, that's dairy based, but it's not milk. But it tastes good. It's probably awful for me too, but it's my holiday indulgence. Vanessa's laughing at me. Vanessa, put your headphones on. We got a minute here. You're not an eggnog fan.
No, I'm not. There's something about drinking eggs that just, no, thank you.
It's wild the number of people that have been sending emails about different kinds of eggnog. You can make it yourself, right? And apparently you're telling me during the break that there's some kind of viral how do you say that, TikTok-y thing going around?
There's a viral TikTok that's been going around about eggnog as well, pouring it into root beer, mixing it together, and it's just kind of like a nice little drink. I'm not a fan. However, I do love root beer, so I am willing to give it a shot that way.
So let me before I agree, because I want to see what the makeup of this thing is. You take just a glass and you put eggnog in it and you mix it with root beer.
Yes.
All right, I'll try that.
Yeah, same. Because to me, it sounds like a root beer float.
Yes.
But I would never drink eggnog solo. No, thank you.
So maybe we'll make eggnog floats and we'll do a video on it. We'll put it out there and people can gauge my reaction.
Yeah.
Hey, the Premier's coming in on Friday. Maybe we'll make him one too. Maybe we'll put him in a chipper mood.
Okay.
We'll see, right?
And now is it just going to be root beer then?
Yeah, I better be careful with that one, right? Yeah. Can you see the headlines? Talk show host poisons the Premier. Anyway, we'll definitely try that. Thanks, Vanessa.
No problem.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. It's I don't know. I think I was like 5 or 6. Do you remember in the old days? And here I'm going to be the old guy rocking on the front porch in my chair, but I can remember as a kid when we still had home delivery of milk, right? They used to come a couple times a week, and where I was from, they had big white plastic jugs of milk, and then you could order special things like Beep. Do you remember Beep? I think you can still get Beep. You could put a note in your mailbox, and then the next week they would bring the Beep. But I can remember this time of the year, when it was milk day, I remember getting up very early as a kid because we had milk delivery early, like 5 o'clock in the morning. And I remember getting up early and opening the door because in Northern Ontario this time of the year, it's cold. So things would freeze. And if you've ever had frozen eggnog before, you know what I'm talking about. But I can remember it being like that kickoff to Christmas and that running downstairs to see what was under the Christmas tree thing for me. But it was in November. And anyway, it's just 7-year-old Dan talking. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Couple of open lines available for you if you want to get in here. We've got a couple of minutes before we have to move on and welcome Dr. Rob into the program. If you're wondering what I'm talking about with the Premier and you're just catching it or just joining us, the Premier of Nova Scotia is going to be on this program on Friday at 11 o'clock. He'll be here for an hour, and he'll be here to answer some questions, we hope. And we're looking forward to his visit. So make sure you make some time for us from 11 until 12 on Friday. We'll have a conversation with Tim Houston. And there's a lot to talk about with the Premier, is there not? Certainly is. Hey, Topher, what's on your mind?
Good morning, Dan and the Todd Veinotte Nation, people of the Todd Veinotte Nation. BBC.
Yeah.
I don't condone it, but, imitation is the highest form of flattery. And I would say they're imitating Donald Trump. And right now, the biggest threat to our future is disinformation and misinformation. And just because they did it doesn't make it right, but it brings it to the top of the list of what we should be looking for in our society right now with the media and social media and all this stuff that's out there. NSP. Yep. Listen, I had some good. I had some real. I was pretty upset with them NSP there a couple months back, but sure. I really appreciate what they did with my meter reading. They paid me in full, and I suggest a lot of other people do that. Don't pay your bill, just read your meter until they took my advice and got the cause guys on the meter readers now. Really like that. I don't know if it was my advice. I'm sure someone that was a CEO thought that way before I did. But anyway, I really appreciate that. And also, I haven't put my condolences out there for Tony, Mike, and Bill. Like Bill Mont he's an integral part of talk radio. And, he really pushed Rick Howe along to keep him on the air.
Yep.
And I really appreciate everything that Rogers does to keep this platform open so that idiots like me can have a little say every once in a while.
Well, you're not an idiot, Topher. We're having a good call today.
Well, I used to push the boundaries really hard, especially with Rick, and but Rick always was the better man. And one day he got really mad at me and told me never call back again. And I called back the next day, and he put me right on.
There you go.
That was the kind of man Rick Howe was. Todd Veinotte and Dan, the man Allstrand.
I appreciate that, man. Hey, Topher, we're up against the break. I appreciate it, sir.
Yeah.
Thanks. And that's going to do it for the open hour, folks. Rick Howe. The studio's named after him, and boy, I think about him a lot when I'm sitting in this chair. He was a big part of this station, and it taught me a lot. I mentioned beep. I thought it was still around. It came back there for a while, did it not? But they discontinued it, apparently. I'm not a huge beep fan, but got a couple emails from people saying, no, it's not around anymore, Dan. So there you go. Maybe we start the petition and get beep started. We can have it the one of those change.orgs, bring beep back to Nova Scotia. Anyway, thanks to everybody who dialed the numbers and joined the conversation. I appreciate it. You make my day every day you do it, and I certainly learn a lot from you here as we roll along. We're going to stop, take a break, as I mentioned. Changing gears a little bit when we come back from the news, it's time for Science Files. If you have a science-related question, if you have something that you saw, something that you read about, something that you want a second opinion on maybe, a perfect opportunity to do so when we welcome Science Files and Dr. Rob Thacker into the studio. We're going to take a break for the news. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. I'm going to get eggnog. Back in a minute. All right, welcome back. It is Tuesday. It's just after the noon news, and that means it's time now for Science Files with our good friend and astrophysicist. Can I? That's not normally something you would say. My good friend and astrophysicist, Dr. Rob Thacker from St. Mary's University.
Funnily enough, for me, that is a familiar thing to say.
Right, because you have lots of friends that are astrophysicists.
I do indeed, actually,
right?
Yes, I do.
And he's here to answer your science-related questions. We're already off the rails. He's here to answer your science-related questions, 902-405-6000 or 1-877.
And it's not even weird for me to say, here's my friend Dan, the radio host, because I have a number of friends who are radio hosts.
Right? I just don't have a bunch of letters after my name. I have a bunch of... Anyway, never mind. 902-405-6000.
No, they come out of your mouth.
Yeah, right. 902-405, if I could get a medal for... Anyway, 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Dr. Rob's here for the next hour to answer your science-related questions. Should you have one, he is... we try to stump him, and he's...
It's okay. I'm totally cool with being stumped because it's a learning moment for all of us.
See? Look at that.
Right.
Academic. All through and through. Dr. Rob, very quickly before, speaking of academics, there's a pretty important talk that's going to happen down there at St. Mary's on Friday that, you're pretty excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. So Friday is the 2025 Dan McLennan Memorial Lecture in Astronomy, which we've been hosting since 2015, so this will be the 10th, I guess, and so, or maybe 11th. So the speaker, and this is really interesting, is Dr. Laurie Rousseau-Neptune. She's from the University of Toronto, but she's also the star...
Yes.
Astrophysics joke, sorry. Of a Canada Film Board documentary called North Star. Everyone's like, oh, groan, dad jokes.
Dad jokes.
No, she's the star of North Star. And so because even the title's a pun. But anyway, so Laurie is an incredible woman. She's Innu, and she's got a really interesting perspective on life. She's got a PhD. She's worked out in Hawaii with the Canada France Hawaii telescope and so on. And so she's going to be talking about a lot about what we're learning from the sky, what we can learn in the future, but also putting this in the context of how we looked at things in the past as well. So I think it's going to be a really fantastic event. Anyone who's interested, we're already up to 230 tickets. They are free.
Nice.
But if you want to actually go, we've still got about 60 left, and you can just Google Eventbrite Dan McLennan Lecture in Astronomy, and it should get straight to the page.
Nice. And I'm sure it'll be a lot of fun and interesting perspectives too, right?
And for all ages, I should say. I mean, Laurie is really a very energetic, fantastic speaker who will have something for everyone.
Social media exploded last week, Dr. Rob, and when I see explosions of pictures of northern lights, I immediately think of you. Unfortunately, we were obscured here a little bit. You got up for it, though.
Well, I did get up. So, and I should say our technician, Tiffany Fields, amazing. Tiffany, she actually got pictures the day before because this happened over a couple of days. The second day was nonetheless more spectacular, but unfortunately we got up and we had a lot of cloud. I checked the cloud forecast and it wasn't looking good, so I'm just going to be honest, I went back to bed.
Right.
So that was kind of a little bit disappointing, but there were some absolutely amazing videos, right? One from South Dakota especially, of greens and reds and so on. Some of these get, I think, a little bit post-processed, so they look a bit more amazing than they actually were in some cases. But nonetheless, anyone who's seen one of these really big displays live, you can't help but go,
well known. I'm from Northern Ontario and still have lots of friends and family there, and and their social media. In fact, my brother told me that they were so bright at one point, woke him up. Like he thought that somebody was coming in the driveway.
Oh, that's crazy, right? I'm guessing that probably would have been the green that would have.
Yeah, like he must have had the window open and thought somebody was headlights or whatever. But it woke him up, and then he saw it, snapped a picture of it. So.
See, that's actually one thing that I think is really interesting, that when this was happening like 30 years ago and we had the good old classic or film cameras or just the very beginnings, right, it was actually quite difficult to take a picture, right? But now we have incredibly sensitive sensors that will actually resolve things in low light very quickly. And so you can even take a picture with your cell phone, which is bonkers when you think about it, right? And so now we do see all of these pictures, whereas years and years and years ago, it was actually quite a difficult thing to take a good picture of an aurora.
Right, because of the iris and getting the lens. You have to tripod.
You had to have what we call a very big aperture, get lots of light onto the film, and then, I mean, you had to hope that you got it pointed in the right direction and so on.
And because they're quick, right? They move too, right?
Yeah, they do. Yep.
Anyway, for those that are wondering what we're talking about, Aurora Borealis or Northern Lights, that is what, Dr. Rob?
Oh, so that is what? Okay, Aurora Borealis. So when we have energetic material coming off the sun, literally the sun is this ball of energy with magnetic fields and so on. And every now and again, the magnetic fields will actually go through a process where they suddenly snap back into place. And when they do that, they release a ton of energy that shoots out. And so there'll be charged particles, there'll literally be pieces of hydrogen that have had the electrons stripped off them, and those will flow towards the Earth. And then eventually when it gets to the Earth, it's going to interact with our magnetic field, get funneled down to the poles. And as it does that, all of the high energy that's there will interact with the atoms that are actually in our atmosphere, and you'll see what we call the emission spectra of the atoms, oxygen, nitrogen, and so on. And so you'll see different colors depending upon which particular way the atoms are being excited, and it just looks awesome.
It does. And it's a range. It can go from like a very dark red to a very light green and everything in between, right?
Yeah. Typically, green is the most commonly observed, but if you have something that's very high up, there's a particular excitation of oxygen that will give you very strong reds as well.
And it happens... It's not rare, but it doesn't happen all the time. More along the poles because it has to filter all the way down, right?
Yeah, so we have the Aurora Borealis and Aurora Australis as well, right? So it happens at both the poles. I will say that I think we're seeing more activity further south over the past year than we have seen in quite some time. A lot of that's probably down to the fact that the Earth's atmosphere, very high up, is still a little bit puffed up from a lot of energetics that have been going on. And because of that, when you actually have this large influx of energy come in, it can actually interact with material that's that much higher up. And so we're seeing things coming further south than we normally do. I mean, I was in Halifax for... 15 years before I actually saw an aurora here.
And that was a couple of years ago we saw the really good one, right?
Yeah, exactly.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We welcome Kevin to the show. Kevin, how are you?
Hi, guys. It's funny because I grew up in Northern Ontario in like the Shaplow region, which is not real far north, but far enough. Mm-hmm. And I never seen auroras once.
Really?
Not once. The only thing when I was a little kid, I remember being out at night, like well after dark, and the skies were shimmering in a white, but I never seen like red or green or any of that stuff.
Oh, wow.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, crazy.
It is.
But what I called in about, and it's kind of funny in this conversation, is Doc, I dropped an email in to you, and it's called QCAN, Canadian. So, and it's about cameras, really super high speed stuff that you'd be able to bolt to like a telescope and then take pictures of things you've never seen before.
So I've got to ask because I actually love cameras. So what's new about the technology?
It's actually some of the technology is what's on the market today. It's being reused. And so
is it super high res? Is that what the difference is?
Or high frame rate capture?
Yeah, it's the high rate of capture of about 142 hertz. It's like 10 times faster than a quantum unit. And but it's most of the stuff is there. It's all buildable, and it's going to take a little bit of building.
Okay.
But I'm pretty sure that there's going to be a piece in there's about 9 pages, and there's going to be something in there that you might like.
Okay, well, I can take a look.
yeah, if you wouldn't mind, then let me know. There's an email address. If you think that it might be decent, let me know, and that's all I ask.
All right, got it.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it. Dr. Rob will do his homework, we'll say. And all your students are laughing right now. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's take a break. Science Files continues on the other side. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. We are back in minutes. Welcome back. This is Science Files. He is Dr. Rob Thacker. He's here to answer your science-related questions. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. And we welcome Paul to the program. Paul, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Your question, please.
Yes, I wanted him to explain to me the lines from the airplanes in the sky when it's beautiful out.
Talking about those chemtrails, right?
Well, whatever they call them, yeah, they seem to last like for hours.
Okay.
I'm wondering how come they're like that.
Yeah. So these are what we call contrails, right? And so whether you do or whether you don't see them when a plane flies over is all about the state of the air that they're flying through. And so what you need to have is to create a contrail, that's really a situation where you have very quickly moving air over part of the wing and coming out behind the engine and so on. And so those will actually lead to the condensation of water within the air, right? And so whether or not that happens depends upon how much water there is that's actually sitting in the air and whether it's ready to be basically condensed out into these particular trails that we see. So sometimes there's a lot of water that's just waiting to condense out and the plane goes through. You put all of the nucleation points, as we call it, and they start the condensation process starts happening, so you get this lovely line behind the aircraft. And then other times, if the air is really dry and there's just not enough water that's ready to condense out, then it will just fly through and you won't see a thing, right? You literally won't see. You may see a little sort of like dark emissions out of the backs of the engines if they're burning very well or something like that. But most of the time, when you see things flying over, you don't tend to see the contrails, but obviously once you have a situation in which contrails are being formed, then it's pretty amazing because then you'll see how much traffic we do actually have going over Nova Scotia, the air corridor that we have here. And so if there are contrails being formed, then you will see it pretty obviously because they'll hang around for a bit of time as well. Eventually they're dissipated by essentially the wind sort of like blowing them out and stretching them out.
And that was my question, Dr. Rob. You know, sometimes when the contrails go over, they're there and they're very dense and they're very solid, and then they're there for a long time, and other times they're not there for very long. Is that the wind shear up there, or how does that work?
That's going to be a combination of both what the overall level of humidity in the air is, as well as how quickly they're getting dispersed, right? And on top of that, if you have a lot of heating in a given part of the atmosphere, like you can have the sun re-reflecting back up, heating a given layer, that can actually help just basically shunt the water back into the air as well, have it evaporate too. But most of the time, when you see them actually sort of like dissipate over time, you'll see them based on wind shear, basically taking them apart.
Now, we know that pilots don't have rear view mirrors. Would make a lot of sense. But can a pilot or a passenger in a plane, and I'm trying to think if I ever have, and I don't recall, can we see them when we're at the same level with the airplane?
I believe you can, but it's difficult to look back and see. Right? So I may be hallucinating this, right, like an AI, but I believe I've seen a TV show where they had a camera outside that was looking back at the contrails. Yeah.
Thanks for the question, Paul. I appreciate it. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. And we now welcome Dave to the show. Dave, how are you?
Good, thank you. I just wanted to ask Rob a question, if I may, or maybe two.
Sure.
Firstly, Rob, are you any more closer to convinced that Three-Eye Atlas is alien?
You know the answer to that one, Dave.
Well, you know, there's sure a lot of talk about it, and there seems to be a lot of irregularities about it. I don't believe it is. I don't think there's anything coming into our solar system from beyond, I'm afraid, but I know a lot of people are somewhat
I think there are things that are coming in, but I don't think those things that are coming in are necessarily coming from alien civilizations, and that's the key thing for me.
Well, that's right, and created by some form of life that's billion years away, maybe, or whatever. I just don't get it. I don't see that happening. But anyways, did you see the booster? I believe it was NASA landed the rocket.
You're talking about the
Blue
Blue Origin launch, the Escapade mission that was last week?
Was last week. I saw it on YouTube, and I just sort of go through some things, and they landed on, I guess we'll call it a barge out in the ocean. Is that correct?
Just like SpaceX does. That's right. Yeah.
Just like SpaceX, isn't that something? Now, my question to you, so that the whole idea of they send it off, you could see the people. I just love that. People celebrating. It's something nice to see, I suppose. Because
it's a little bit different from the old NASA movies of the moon landing and people going, "Yay! Okay, we've got a job to do."
Right.
But still, we're getting off this planet. I think the whole thing is there's so many young people. We're searching, and it is a positive spin. Now, this rocket is it's going to orbit Mars, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
That's right. So the Escapade mission is going to put 2 satellites in around Mars. Yep.
My question, because they're saying that it's going to launch, once it does this, it's going to launch probes. Is that correct?
It's already done that. So it's actually... Okay, go ahead.
So this thing is the rocket is on its way to orbit Mars. And what is a probe? Is that a satellite, or is that something that's going to actually hit the surface, or is it just going to go around and take pictures and collect data?
So probe is a very generic term, but we also use it interchangeably depending upon whether it's actually going to be a landing mission or not. But essentially what we've got in this case is the Escapade mission is sending 2 craft that will end up in orbit around Mars.
So this is more obviously observation, correct? This is
So if you want me to talk about what Escapade is going to do,
sure.
I'm happy to do that. So it's kind of a neat mission. So what Escapade is going to do is people may know that we've talked about the impact of having a magnetic field for a planet, right? And we've actually just talked about that in terms of the aurora, right? And so Mars doesn't have a particularly strong magnetic field at all. So it's really impacted by the solar wind, right? In fact, solar wind has been a big part of one of the reasons why Mars's overall atmosphere has been effectively kind of boiled off in a way. And so Escapade is sending 2 satellites that are really going to go and measure all of what we call the plasma physics, how charged particles move around in the space around Mars as well. And so this is going to be the most detailed measurements we have of the magnetosphere around Mars. And that's the whole point of it. It's a little bit complicated. It's not easy to go into the details in a way that's sort of like fun, like talking about an aurora is. But it's going to be a really important piece of information about the overall nature of Mars, its stability of its atmosphere, and how that may have been evaporated over time in the past.
So it takes samples, or is it?
Yeah, literally. So you've got 2 crafts. So people know about when you have a magnet, you have field lines, yes. Right? So having 2 of those allows you to have connections along field lines and so on. And so again, it's really this idea of having a probe. You can put a charge out there, and you can see how that disperses and make measurements with the other probe as well.
And that gets beamed back to Earth, right?
All of that data will be taken and then sent back to Earth for analysis.
Is it faster than Canada Post is?
If I say yes, I'm in so much trouble, aren't I? So it is, right? But
how long does it take? If I wanted to
it's
beam
coming back. It's coming back on a light beam, right?
Right.
So it all depends upon where Mars is, but typically we usually talk about the distance to Mars being about 20 minutes.
So really?
Yeah.
I've had dial-up that was slower than that.
No, you're going to make me check now, aren't we?
It's amazing that we're able to send that information back.
Right. So okay, I was right. Whew. So at its farthest is 22 minutes. Closest is about 3 minutes. Right?
Really?
So, yeah. So
all the way from Mars.
Yep.
That's amazing. And it travels on the beam of light. Is that the way that works?
Well, it's just like radio, you know.
Right. Well, except I would imagine it would take a long time for a radio signal to get back here, though. Right?
But it's the same. It's both traveling at the speed of light.
Well, there you go.
Right. So, I mean, if we could, I mean, this is the thing. So there's a lot of interest right now in using laser communication.
Okay.
Right. And so with lasers, it's although it's what we call electromagnetic radiation, it allows you to send the information at much higher data rates than you can with radio. Radio, essentially, the amount of information you can send is proportional to the amount of power that you can put into the signal. That's not true with sending a light signal.
And that was my next question. Yeah. Being based on terrestrial radio that I'm familiar with, the transmitters are measured in watts, right?
Yeah.
Power. To send a signal that far terrestrially would require an immense amount of power to do that.
Yeah, so in fact, the beams that we get back, they're not actually that powerful, which is one of the reasons why we have to have honking great big dishes for reception.
Right.
Right, and that's, again, one of the reasons why we don't actually get particularly high data rates. I don't know what the data rate for Escapade is, but it's probably not that high. Although, all of that said, it's not taking images, so it may not matter too much.
So we'll be able to stream the latest episode of its favorite show, and it won't buffer too bad.
It can download as many cats as it wants.
902. Thanks for the question, Dave. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's take a break and put the show back on its rails. And Science Files will continue on the other side after the news. All right, welcome back. This is Science Files, and we've managed to avoid it, Dr. Rob, for some time, but a bunch of AI stories came across. Made him laugh right away. A bunch of AI stories came across my desk, and I know that you're teaching an ethics course this semester.
Well, it's a course that's focusing on fundamentals of AI, and one of those things that we do have to talk about as part of it is ethics and risks, and then biases as well. And so it's been a lot of fun to teach. I mean, it's pretty amazing when you stand up in front of a class and say, this has been a real learning experience for me as well. Thank you for helping me, right? Because that does happen. Because when people bring things up, they're often probing areas that you may not have thought about. Right?
Artificial intelligence obviously is here, and it's impacting our everyday life, Rob. And I came across a couple of stories this week that that kind of jumped off the page for me, and I brought it up a couple of days, maybe it was last week on the open hour, and it didn't take a lot of calls on it because I think people still are trying to figure everything out.
Yeah.
But there was Billboard magazine, which you and I are both very familiar with, which is the North American standard for charting music, right?
Yeah.
And it's different than it was when you and I were growing up. But,
that was everything when we were growing up.
Oh my goodness, right? But they have a bunch of charts. Anyway, the reason why it came to my attention was that there was a song that topped the country digital download chart that was generated by AI and not hidden. It was very
open about it. Yep.
But it was all done by AI. And then that asks some of those questions, right? Is this appropriate?
Well, I think it sort of does make you pause to people who just say, well, people can recognize AI stuff and they just don't appreciate it, right? Because clearly someone's appreciating this, right? And that's the thing. I mean, how can I put it? I think that human preferences, I don't want to back myself into a corner on this. I think those are complex, right? And it may not necessarily be easy to figure out a perfect song or something like that. Certainly humans have never been able to do that, right? But people write albums that they believe in and so on. And that's part of being an artist as well. I think that's important to point out, is that you have a message that you want to communicate as an artist. Well, not everyone. Some people just like selling records. But most serious artists, they have a specific thing in mind when they're producing an album that they want to communicate.
Is music the medium that will likely face the AI battle strongest at first? Because I had a conversation with Dr. Jason Brown, who is a professor over at Dalhousie, that is breaking music down into math, and it's very mathematical, and that would be right in the wheelhouse of AI, would it not?
Yeah, although I have read a fair amount about this, I'm not considering myself enough of an expert to put my neck out on the line and say which particular area of performance is going to be impacted first. I mean, I know that, and we'll probably both agree on this, that the more money there is in a given area, the more likely people are to throw AI at it. So visual performance is where there's being an awful lot of effort expended right now. And so Sora and things like that, the AI animation tools and so on, those do have the potential, because so many people are involved in the production of visual mediums, to have a huge impact. Whereas, I mean, yes, you'll have an engineer, producer, and so on when you're creating music and so on. You'll have studio engineers, maybe 2 or 3 of them if it's a really big setup or something like that. But it's not the 50 or 60 personnel that you would need on a movie set just to get a shot done in a morning, right? So that's a pretty big difference in terms of the overall impact and the overall costs associated with them and the money you could save by going in that direction. So, but we have seen lots of things change in the movie industry with special effects, like green screening stuff. And so all of the sets that we used to build and so on, those are kind of gone out of the window. And now you have these giant green screen studios, right? So there are sort of like real changes there. Personally, just because it's so influential, visual mediums are so influential, I think that's going to be where AI really still gets the most effort. But in terms of the actual quality of the outcomes, I think it's probably reasonable to say that if you keep the overall sophistication of what you're dealing with simpler, like you just focus on sound as opposed to sound and visuals, you probably got a reasonable argument that you would have more influence there first.
How about the story of Tilly Norwood?
Oh, the AI actress.
Right.
Yes.
AI-generated actress.
Yeah.
A digital character created entirely using artificial. The Tilly Norwood in a sentient world doesn't exist, but is on the screen. It looks and sounds and does everything that a regular actress would do.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. And in fact, this is something that I have read a fair amount because I was really interested in the SAG-AFTRA negotiations and what they were doing around AI. Because, I mean, a lot of the problems they had were essentially around AI. And so this particular situation fits under basically the artificial performer category, which is not very well specified in the collective agreement. And that's one of the reasons why there were some concerns at the end of the negotiations, even though they got something to move forward. There were real potential loopholes of where studios could go, and that would prevent people from getting any royalties, because they would argue that this particular format has been created without the help of anyone else, which is not true, but you can't really trace back where they have been influenced by in the training models and so on. So that makes it difficult. And this is exactly what people are worried about. Right at the end of the day, this is a synthetic performer that really doesn't have any significant amount of funding going back to an actual performer that helped create it, as opposed to voice dubbing, for a simple example, right?
AI in this business is here.
Yeah,
it's not happening in this radio station, but it is otherwhere.
So is that a real Dan or a fake Dan?
No, like I say about the opener, often imitated, never duplicated.
Yeah, so Tilly Norwood is, in fact, the thing that I think most people in SAG-AFTRA are really quite concerned about for obvious reasons. So I think we'll see how this plays out, but in the next round of negotiations, this is going to be a big issue.
Interesting, when Tilly Norwood became a thing, there were some, obviously, the entertainment industry is largely driven by money. Mm-hmm. And when there's something new in the entertainment industry, people line up to try and get some of that money.
Yeah.
And there was a number of agencies that wanted to represent Tilly Norwood, and the others that were in the stable of those agencies, the flesh and blood actors or actresses, said that they were going to boycott it because it's that much of a concern for people that are working in the industry that they are to be replaced by Tilly Norwoods of the world.
I mean, I honestly don't know where things are going to go, because creating lifelike performances is actually difficult for human beings.
It is.
Right? So yet alone artificial animation and so on. Anyone who's watched the follow-on Star Wars movies and so on will know a few of the artificial characters in that just don't look very good.
Right.
Right? And so it's not an easy thing to do well, and I'm not necessarily convinced that human beings are going to be particularly easily fooled. Like a lot of the AI animations you see is within seconds, you can tell it's just pretty sloppy, right? Now, I know they're improving and people will say they get better. And the more money you throw at them, the more time you spend on rendering, presumably you can make things better, right? But the question is whether we can ever get to a level that's truly of sufficient performance that people would buy it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's dreadful to think about it for me, because I don't like the idea of artificial performance Oscars out there. But, it might happen at some point.
Moving forward on AI, you sent me an article today referring to it as creepy slop.
Creepy slop. Yeah, no. So this is about AI advertising that's focused on individuals, right?
Right.
So where I think we do all have a pretty good understanding is how targeted ads have grown on the internet over the past few years. You have an online presence that is being tracked. So people will then start sending you ads that are personally designed for your particular interests. That's a little bit creepy sometimes. We've also talked about how with Alexa, there have been all sorts of questions about whether Alexa was sort of accidentally listening in.
No, she ain't accidentally listening in.
So, no, I'm being nice. And so in this situation, people know that sometimes you get things that are obviously targeted for you. And we've come to a certain extent to accept that, I think, right? And realize that. Anyone who's seen Minority Report with Tom Cruise, right? It's an older movie now, but that's one situation where you're walking down and you see all of these ads that are just focused on you as you walk by them. And so the potential for AI to do that is very clear, right? And here's the thing you should be concerned about. If you're typing very personal things, right, into an AI system, right, I'm going to guess that they are storing that data. Now, there's a user agreement in there at some level, but that data, if it can be anonymized, if it can be anonymized, then they won't be able to use it to target. But it may be that these companies start building their own services around reusing that data. So, for example, OpenAI is going to be releasing their own search engine, right? So you can imagine what that's going to have in it as well. So
it's already been inundated with. I get lots of, obviously, and I love it when I get emails. I'll ask questions on the radio, and I'll get emails from people who will Google things.
Yeah.
But what I'm finding more and more now is that when somebody Googles something, I'm putting quotes around it, the AI-generated response that you get at the top of your Google page is what I get sent.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that it's accurate to the form of the question, but doesn't get the nuance.
No, and so, okay, so we spoke about this. A lot of people were very concerned when Google announced they were going to do this. And for Google, I think it's a bit of a mixed blessing, right? Because now people are seeing that Gemini isn't actually a particularly good AI. Gemini hallucinates quite a lot, right? And so a number of times I've seen the AI responses come back, and it's literally been garbage, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if Google has taken a bit of a hit on this, right? Because when they said we were going to do this, a whole bunch of people who were involved in search engine optimization were saying, well, look, if the top answer you give people is your AI summary, isn't that going to cut down on the traffic that's going to websites? And the answer is yes, it has, right? And it's already impacting what you're seeing in terms of the emails coming to you. So this is happening with Google search, right? Now, if OpenAI releases their own, you can imagine what's going to happen with that, right? So I personally am not a fan of AI-assisted search. I would much rather have keyword searches. Anyone who spends time searching via keywords develops a bunch of skills that are actually fairly difficult to replicate with AI searches, right? And so I think there's a fundamental problem there. We've had a big debate on this within my own field about how quickly we can find information about things, right? Like there are AI search engines for doing research on astrophysics and stuff like that, but they are not at the level of skill that many of the people who I associate with have in terms of finding articles associated with a particular area of research, right? So we're not there yet. A lot of it is sloppy, and a lot of the stuff that gets done, it's done under the pressures of business, which means you don't have a lot of time to do it. It's just about pushing the thing out. And so that's one of the concerns with this advertising stuff, that it could be directed at you, but it could look a bit creepy and a bit sloppy as well.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Dr. Rob and I are going to hallucinate during the break, and we're going to be back. All right, 2 minutes left. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. He is Dr. Rob Thacker, and we'll go to the phones and welcome Sandra to the show. Sandra, how are you?
Oh, I'm good. Thank you. Hi. I wanted to ask Rob, maybe if you could make a couple of predictions for me.
Prediction is difficult, especially about the future.
Yeah, I know. So it's November 18th, and it's cloudy, and I did hear a maritime launch would possibly be setting up their vehicle starting today. Do you? What I wanted to know is if what the trajectory would be, just in case we could see it from here in Halifax.
So I'm going to assume, because I haven't looked at this in detail, but I'm going to assume this is suborbital, right? So that means you're going to be going south over sort of like the Atlantic Ocean. So potentially, if we had clear skies, you might be able to see something, but we don't have clear skies, so yeah, probably not.
Yeah, right. If it's today. Yeah, okay. Yeah, and you know what? Like about 6 years ago, and I was living in Spryfield, and they sent off a vehicle from Florida, and my friend was following it live on YouTube at the time, and we actually did see it that day, looking towards Sambro for a few seconds. That was, quite interesting. So yeah, okay, sounds great. Same kind of location, heading south over the Atlantic.
Yeah.
My second question, which I just thought of, is this supernova that's supposed to possibly explode sometime this year. And it's not like a super duper nova, but it's a supernova. And I guess it hasn't happened yet because I'm hoping to hear about it in the media so that maybe we could see the star in the sky.
Okay.
Do you have any information on that?
So I'm not sure exactly which star you're talking about. But the one that we often do talk about is a star called Betelgeuse, right? And so that is a big red giant star. And we think it's what we would call close to going into a supernova stage. But if you look at the sort of most recent estimates, they probably put it within like 100,000 year kind of envelope for when it can happen. So I wouldn't say hold out much hope for that, if I'm completely honest, right? But if it did happen, boy, oh boy, oh boy, that would be pretty incredible. I mean, that would be daylight visible, right?
Sandra, appreciate the call. Hopefully that answered it. Having that conversation with the folks at Maritime Launch. Was it last week we did that, Vanessa, or was it this week? I don't remember. Anyway, we talked to them not that long ago about the rocket launch today. Yep. They had the 18th circle, but they are thinking more along the lines of the 19th, which is tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean,
the sky conditions are to be better.
Yeah, I mean, today wouldn't be a good day for a launch. I mean, you could if you had to, but if you don't have to, then it makes sense to postpone it.
They're pretty excited there, and they think, you and I have described it, the reason why cancel makes sense because of the orbits that it can put vehicles into.
That's completely legit. I mean, I haven't copped flack for saying this, right? It is physically a good place to launch from if you want to put something into a polar orbit. It makes sense to do it. You don't want to do it at the equator unless you have a very powerful rocket. You're going to have to expend energy to put a system into a polar orbit if you launch from the equator. So it does actually make some sense purely from a physics perspective to launch from Canso.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. That is the number if you want to get in. Got an email question. This one comes to us from Mark, Dr. Rob. It says, and my favorite subject, is mathematics a human way to make sense of our universe, or is it an intrinsic part of the universe, or both? And if it is part of the universe, why doesn't it explain or solve things like the three-body problem?
Okay, so this is
a pretty heavy question.
This is
a
very,
show, right?
very deep and difficult question that I don't think anyone on the planet truly has a good answer for, if I'm completely honest. So this is... Let me try and boil it down in simple words, right? So there are some people who think that the fact that we live in the universe means that we are biased to understand the universe through processes that happen within the universe, right? And those are people who really kind of think that the discovery of mathematics is kind of this inevitable thing that happens, right? Because we are part of the universe, right? There are other people who think that that's not so much the case, and in fact that human beings can think and rationalize about things and come up with their own systems of understanding. And, if we were lizards, we would have a different system of understanding.
Some people are lizards.
Oh, I nearly did a political joke then, but I won't. So in this case, it means that Dan knows exactly what I'm laughing about, which is quite funny. Anyway, so this has been a really hot topic for a number of years amongst people who are really interested in the nature of mathematics and what it means. And I'll be honest with you, I think that the true answer lies somewhere between both extremes. Right. And the reason why I say that is because I do genuinely believe that human beings, by being parts of the universe themselves, are necessarily influenced by its very nature to produce things that describe what's in the universe. And so even the simple things that we do, like counting, which sounds to us an obvious thing, it isn't necessarily obvious. You have to develop intelligence to start counting. But once you understand what counting is, you can see this system of literally grouping things and so on throughout the universe. This happens pretty much everywhere. So my genuine viewpoint on this is I think that it's partly a combination. I think there are what I will call environmental influences that shape our thinking, but at the same time, there is an amazing element of human ingenuity behind our ability to understand and rationalize about the world around us.
Mathematics ever evolving, right? You've never really solved it.
And it's weird, right? I mean, people tend to think that math is this immutable system of proofs and so on, but it's not. When you start digging down to it, there can be questions in logical systems that you can't prove or disprove, right? This is the famous Austrian logician Kurt Gödel worked on this, and they're literally undecidable statements. It's kind of freaky once you realize that. Right? Because then you realize, maybe you just got to have an intuition about something. And that's actually true. Like there will be mathematicians who look at a certain proposition or logicians who look at a certain proposition and go, I kind of think that has to be true. Right? But it's not obvious based upon proofs based upon the axioms of the system. You can't do it.
About a minute left, Rob. Again, the big talk at St. Mary's.
Yeah, McLennan. Dan McLennan Memorial Lecture in Astronomy.
Easy for you to
2025, so I can say that 3 times quickly, with Dr. Laurie Rousseau-Neptune. It should be a lot of fun, past, present, and future of astronomy. Really about asking some big questions and using some different voices to look at those questions. So it should be a really good night.
Science Files, the only program on this radio station where we can go from alien technology in the form of an asteroid to hallucinating and shedding lizard skin. It's an interesting hour, is it not?
And no LSD behind any of that at all. All legit.
Thanks, Dr. Rob. Dr. Rob here, of course, here each and every Tuesday as we roll forward here and just about ending the show. Thanks to all of our guests, including Dr. Rob and his lizard skin, and everybody else that joined the show to impart their knowledge. You truly make it very interesting each and every day that we do this. To all of you that picked up the phone and dialed the numbers and joined the program, you make my day each and every day that you do it. We have a busy show for you tomorrow. Don't forget, it's Wednesday. That means Dr. John is in the house to answer your medical questions. Make sure you got a few, because he'll be here for a whole hour to answer them. Until then, everybody, get out there and enjoy Nova Scotia. We're so lucky to live in the place that we do. Be well, and remember, be kind to one another.